I'm not teaching, I'm publicly learning. But hi and welcome to Learning for the Life in the UK test, part 79, Constitutional Monarchy, the Bill of Rights, that is on page 33, while doing wrist training, and if you participate in the wrist training, that is at your own risk. So we were just talking about the time of 1689 when this Bill of Rights was introduced, and that confirmed the rights of Parliament and limited the King's power. So it limited the King's power and it confirmed the rights of Parliament. The King had to ask every year for funding of army and navy. And also, if you could not just collect taxes, what was it? A new Parliament had to be elected at least every 3 years, then 7, and today it's every 5 years. And in the Parliament, two main groups were the Whigs and the Tories, and today there's still a Conservative Party in Britain which referred to the Tories. And the Parliament took control of who could be monarch, and the monarch had to be a Protestant from now on. And also free press started to develop, so newspapers or other publications without that the government had something to say in them. From 1695, newspapers were allowed to operate without a government license. Increasing numbers of newspapers began to be published. So, 1695, that is 6 years after the Bill of Rights. And now newspapers could write and print and sell newspapers without to have a license from the government. So they don't have to have, I don't know how it looks, but basically a piece of paper which says that they are allowed to make newspapers. They can just do it, basically. So the government cannot only say what is written in them, they are not only free press, but they can also operate without a license, or a government license. Increasing numbers of newspapers began to be published, so now many people thought that might be a nice job. To write an article about something interesting, something new about the Royal Society. If Isaac Newton had published something about gravity or the light of a rainbow, for example, maybe people want to read about what color the light has. It seems white, but if people buy it, maybe in the newspaper they're going to read that it actually has the colors of a rainbow. So the laws passed after the Glorious Revolution are the beginning of what is called constitutional monarchy. So the Glorious Revolution was that James II was Catholic and he had 2 daughters, both Protestant, but his wife got a son, and so the people feared that the next king might be a Catholic and not a Protestant. And so they invited William of Orange into the country. He was a ruler in the Netherlands, and he happened to be the husband of the eldest daughter of James II. And now Mary and her husband William were together governing England. And because that revolution, at least the part in which William came in, was bloodless, it is called the Glorious Revolution. And James II did not just give up. He fled to France and he came back with a French army. And the battle happened at Boyne. So anybody, I'm going to look it up. At Boyne was probably not completely without that the husband, father, or brother did not return. So it was the battle of Boyne. I'm pronouncing it Boyne. I don't know how. It's B-O-Y-N-E. So and these laws passed after the Glorious Revolution are the beginning of what is called a constitutional monarchy. We're going to read on, but let's look if we understand the words. So it was a monarchy, so it had a monarch, a king or queen, but it was a constitutional monarchy, so it had a constitution. Now, what is a constitution? Maybe you're going to read it, but it must have something to do with these Bill of Rights, which are limiting the king's power, and are saying what the parliament can do. Balance of power between monarch and parliament had now permanently changed. Confirmed the rights of the parliament, so what taxes could be made. Let's start with restraint. So we're having the hands next to us. Not flexed, but the hand, 2 strong fists, oh no, just fists, not strong fists, just fists, and we're bringing them now down. That is flexion, and up into extension these fists. And we're having 3 rules for all these exercises. The first rule is that we're not overdoing it. Now, the first rule is that we're stopping as soon as we feel pain. The second rule is that we're going only as far as we can go with a little bit of effort. And the third rule is that we're not overdoing it. So after we have done that now for a couple of times, we are stopping. So we're just going down and up again. And it was the first exercise for spotlight. Now let's do the flashlight. Again, the same position. Fists. Now we're bringing them into ulnar deviation and into radial deviation. So to the outside and to the outside. Again, these 3 rules. The first one is stopping as soon as we feel pain. The second one is that we are going only as far as we can go with a little bit of effort. We want just to strengthen. And the third rule is that we're not overdoing it. So that was the last time. And we're already almost at the half of the time, so we're going on with another exercise. It is the magician. Now the same, just with flat hands. So 3 inside and to the outside. Still the same 3 rules. And we're going on with the 4th exercise, the pancake flipper. Hands next to us, flat hands, and we bring it down. And again down. A few times more, and then we're going on with the changes after the Glorious Revolution, which formed a constitutional monarchy. So, what was the sentence exactly? The laws passed after the Glorious Revolution are the beginning of what is called constitutional monarchy. The monarch remained very important. So the monarch is still, after that Glorious Revolution, very important. But no longer able to insist on particular policies or actions if Parliament did not agree. So it means the monarch could not say, I want that. So it says, I want that. If he wanted something, the Parliament had to agree to what he wanted to do. After William III, and that is the one here we're having with Mary and William III, that is William. After William III, the ministers gradually became more important than the monarch, but this was not a democracy in the modern sense. So, again, that sense. So after this couple, William and Mary, had reigned, now the ministers became more and more important. So the people who the king had around to have the king to get a majority in the parliament. The ministers gradually became more important than the monarchs. So the king was very important in this constitutional monarchy, but now the ministers had become more important than the king. But this was not a democracy in the modern sense. So it's a bit indicated. It had something of democracy. The sentence doesn't say it directly, but it had something of democracy, but it was not as much a democracy as it is today, or not in the sense of it is today a democracy. The number of people who had the right to vote for members of parliament was still very small. Are they meaning with? But this was not a democracy in the modern sense. That is one sentence. It is one sentence. After William III, the ministers gradually became more important than the monarch, but this was not a democracy in the modern sense. They are meaning that the ministers are becoming more important. Is still not what it is in democracy in the modern sense. Or do they mean the democracy in the modern sense that not so many people have the right to vote who is in the parliament? The number of people who had the right to vote for members of parliament was still very small. Only men who owned property of a certain value were able to vote. No woman at all had the vote. Some constituencies were controlled by a single with a family. These were called pocket powers, so I think that is what I have in here when we can examine it. Yes, let's read the end. They were called pocket. These were no. Other constituencies had hardly any voters and were called rotten powers. So let's first with the first part here. The number of people who had the right to vote for members of parliament was still very small. Is it that it is not a democracy in the modern sense, or that the ministers had become more power but not as much, became more important than the monarch? The ministers gradually became more important than the monarch, but this was not a democracy in the modern sense. We are taking all three. The ministers had become more power. It was not a democracy in the modern sense, and the number of people was very small to vote. And that is that only male people had the right to vote, and only if they had a certain, who owned property of a certain value. So only male people who possessed a certain large amount of land had the right to vote, and no woman had the right to vote. Some constants. Let's do the last two wrist exercises. It is the T-Rex in the morning. So we're having flat arms out, and we're bringing the flat hands out, and we're bringing these flat hands up and down, and again up and down, and the last time up and down. And now the cautious big bang. Place the fingertips of one hand on top of the fingernails of the other one, and now open and close, and we're pressing the whole time onto the fingernails, and open and close, and we're going to do it a few times more. Last time. And now the other way around, and we're opening and closing. And now last time we're opening and closing. That was the last exercise. Now just a little relaxation. Just lay the arm down and go with moderate pressure over the middle part of the lower arm. Over that part, there's the extension digital muscle. And just go over it, just to relax that muscle. And a last time. Now the other side. And the last time, and my clock stopped at one time, so we will shorten it a little bit. Some constituencies were controlled by a single birth of the family. These were called pocket boroughs. Other constituencies had hardly any voters and were called rotten boroughs. Maybe that is an area, something like a village or something. A large farm, maybe a little, and they are living, let's say, 50 people. And so that means only one single birth of the family, and they're probably just the males and only the one who had that much land. So it means just one person can vote, but they're living 100 on a large area of land. Maybe something like that. That would be possible after the rules we just read. And these were called pocket boroughs, and other constituencies had hardly any voters and were called rotten boroughs. Do we understand that? Pocket boroughs and rotten boroughs? I don't know. But I don't know how much time I've had also. So thank you very much, and until the next time. And when we will go on with, maybe we will look back to it, we will go on with something hidden in between these sides. No, it's here. A growing population. So I thank you very much, and to a growing population until the next time.